I'm an Albanian, so our nation has, or now is also known for coexistence of religions. I see here the head of the Bektashins of Albania who is here, but we in Albanian nation we tend to see religion really as coexistence, as acceptance of different values and different beliefs. And we are proud of it. But how it was possible, we try to teach everybody else on how it's possible, and it's very difficult for us also to understand this. How is this possible? For me, sometimes the best explanation is that always the nationality was something that we thought as a goal. So when you were asked, what are you? We first said we are Albanian, and then we said the religion, but you know, I don't think that's the only answer. I'm also mayor in a city which has about 40 mosques, one big cathedral, 2 Catholic churches, several Orthodox churches, and almost very soon a Protestant church. I'm invited every year to Bayram celebrations, Iftar, Christmases, and it's all good, but I also have to deal with a lot of things like asking for a permit for a mosque because the church is in the center, so we need to have a mosque in the center. So while it's also coexistence, we also see a lot of competition in terms of where it should be or what we should have. Now, I also come from a nation that was involved in a war in the year 99 with Serbia. And since then, the international community has intervened in Kosovo. When you go around Kosovo for the last 14 years, you see these billboards that says tolerance. And it's done by KFOR, the NATO force. You go to an Albanian populated area, there is a billboard with a cat and a dog which says tolerance. You go to a Serbian neighborhood, it says tolerance. Now, I think we have to move beyond tolerance. Tolerance is actually, for me, not a very good word. Because tolerance, it tells us Albanians that we don't like the Serbs, they are not good, but you should tolerate them. It tells the Serbs that Albanians are not good, but you should learn to tolerate them. And in this sense, I think that we should move beyond tolerance, and I think we should move to acceptance. But acceptance, of course, does not mean that I accept everything that you represent. That's why it's difficult. Tolerance means I don't have to deal with your beliefs. I just have to tolerate you. Acceptance means that I have to challenge your beliefs and my beliefs as well in order to come to a reconciliation in my own head and my own spirit that accepting you is okay for myself. That's why I ask religious leaders today, how are you going to do that? How is this going to happen? Because for us politicians, it's very easy. I disagree with my political, I don't want to call them opponents, but people who don't agree with my beliefs. I respect them. But at the end of the day, I challenge them in elections. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You fight for what you believe in, and that's the concept. How do you do it in religion? How do you reconcile in your own beliefs? Because if you believe in your own religion that that is the truth, and that somebody else believes in something, but you know in your own beliefs that that is wrong, how do you reconcile and how do we go to this acceptance, not just tolerating a different religion? How do you accept that somebody else has different beliefs, those beliefs according to your values are not the same, and how do we go there? Because once we have these differences, politicians exploit them. And this is something that we need to discuss as well. Politics exploits religious differences, be it at the domestic level or at the international level. At the end of the day, you know, as politicians, you're seeking votes. Seeking votes, sometimes you're nice to religious leaders, although behind their backs you speak all kinds of things about religious leaders, but at the same time, this is affecting international politics as well. And I want to today I raised this at breakfast, and I want to discuss this, because we are getting to a very, very, I think, dangerous times and very insecure times, not just in the Middle East, but I think in Europe and in the world. You see European countries increasing their defense budgets, which means that they can talk as much as they can about peace and tolerance, but in fact it means that they're preparing for much worse. And when you're looking at very peaceful countries like Scandinavian countries increasing their military budget, then you know that something is not good. What is happening in the Balkans and regions like this is that all this discussion in the international politics about the clash of civilizations, whether it's Huntington or it's a new idea, you hear all this talk about Islamic State on one side, and you hear all this talk about the Western values and Western countries on the other side. Countries in our region are trying to belong to certain sides, which means that our countries, in order to show that they are friends with the Americans and Europeans, talk more than they should about Islamic extremism, for example, in the region. What happens is then they get isolated, and you're losing the moderates that Mark is talking about. You're trying to talk to the moderates, but actually you're fighting an extreme with another extreme. And many times now I see it in Republika Srpska, now I see it in Kosovo, I see it in Macedonia. Politicians, corrupt politicians are misusing these divisions in the international community to portray themselves as allies of the West and as if they are the ones on the forefront trying to find the Islamic State in the Balkans, which I don't think is such a topic as we are making it. So this is something that should be discussed. This is something is how do we fight extremism? Extremism is bad in any form. Political extremism is bad. I'm not talking only about religious extremism, but do we fight it with another extremism? Do we try to deny every religion because we see this? Do we turn this into a fight against one or other religion because of the extreme elements that appear? And as statistically proven, these are in small numbers. And how do we reconcile religions? How do we make it like in the Albanian nations? How did you go together in Paris when we had the Charlie Hebdo case, 4 religious leaders of Albanians holding hands, marching in Paris, and they don't do it for the cameras only. They do it also in Kosovo, in Albania. It's happening, it's real. We see it every day. But if the situation continues like I'm talking about, it's not going to be like that because then we're going to have more and more extremism also within countries. We can talk about respect, tolerance, but as I said, big interests are at play. And big interest means that there are also financial interests in regions, and politicians misuse this, and corruption is our biggest problem in politics. Until we have corruption, we're going to have politicians who misuse religion, are going to take over conferences, Mufti, all the time, as long as there are topics, but jokes aside, I think we need to move beyond the nice speeches of tolerance. We need to get to the real deal of talking about acceptance, and that means difficult discussions.